We're live now. All right. So, like I was saying, sorry. So, welcome everybody today. It was a very exciting day. We have Alan Knight, who is a good friend, founder of like a local tour, and I'm not going to. But the idea behind the reason why we want you local entrepreneurs who has this unique, a very unique way of making money, first on food and culture in Boston, right? A little bit different, right? Like when you think of your businesses, you're thinking food or doing other things, but not much in terms of education and things like that. Because what he does is so special. And actually, we are going to be working together, future, as well as being able to give you guys jobs working for him, right? So maybe you want to be a tour guide or you want to learn more about the entrepreneurship and what he does. We want that to be an option for you guys. But why have I always said that working in the community is more important than working, I guess, elsewhere? Yeah, that's why you have a mic up here.
Because the community benefits from it.
Right. And how does it benefit?
Like if I own a business in Roxbury and I don't like pay taxes, it goes towards like the schools and all that.
Exactly. Where the money is generated is where the taxes are generated. So if you go and make money downtown, downtown makes that money mostly, right? If you go make that money here in Roxbury, then what happens?
Roxbury gets the money.
Yes, money comes into this community, comes to the school, comes to the local, the roads, the infrastructure, the bridges, the internet, all the things the government provides, that tax money stays here. So we need to think of cultural hubs as a solution. But to have cultural hubs, you need entrepreneurs like Mr. Knight, who is now here in the community, making money in the community, bringing people to our community to look at all the local, all the different, sites that we have here and dropping their dollars here, right? So when you have some of these cultural artifacts, if you show them off, people come into the community and spend money on them. I also want you to understand that not just is he have a great business idea, he's also a great businessman. So when you look at your mentor organization form, which we'll go through, he has a social media, he has logos, um, all the different levels of marketing that he has. That's also very important, right? Because if you don't know, if he doesn't look good, you'll be like, this guy's not serious, right? But when you go to his website, you'll be. So there's activities to go into the website, look at his social media. I actually pulled out a post, which we'll watch maybe towards the end, of his actual, like he was right here doing something on Mel King and the history of Mel King. And these videos and these posts are very important because these are what our curriculum content that we'll be developing this summer, that is what it's all about, right? We're doing storyboards so we can create YouTube videos and video curriculum on some of these issues that we are going to research, all right? So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Knight, and you can introduce himself.
Well, it's so nice to meet you guys, and I want to thank you guys for having me this morning. Marv, local tours is a super passion project for me. I grew up right up the street, Center and Highland, in Nubian Square was my place to go and shop. There's the top shopping cultural district in Boston at one time. For many till I want to say like the 70s and especially the 80s, crack music starts to come in, and that's why you see a lot of the abandoned buildings that are in Union Square. But that's happening in this Square too, when we're talking about them. There's a lot that's happening with our community coming together. Um, and I guess my job is not only the tours, but to highlight what's happening in a positive way. I think if you guys watch the news, you can negative press when we talk about Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester. And so that's not all our communities are. And so me, when I do these tours, to make sure that when people are coming out from out of the community or from the, outside of the community to say, hey, these are the things that are great about our community. When we're talking about our local history and figures like Mel King and Melanie Cass, and figures like Elma Lewis, who maybe you guys don't know much about because they're not really teaching that in the high schools. And so I think another goal for me is to figure out how can we learn more about the local history and local Black figures that have made a difference in our community, instead of just learning about the European history that we learn about for the American Revolution. We learn about Paul Revere. We learn about George Washington and all of those guys, but we're not learning much about all of the really great Black American figures that were a part of the abolition movement, not just downtown Boston, but in Roxbury too. So this is, a really important movement for me. It's a social justice as well, because like Marlon said, I'm looking to figure out how to use my tours to circulate dollars within communities of color, right? So every tour that I do, some of the proceeds from that tour goes right back into those local businesses. And so it's really important for me to continue to do that, and also to highlight the community to others who may not know that we have a really great community here in the Roxbury area, JP and Dorchester and all the rest of the neighborhoods. And so to try to dispel those stigmas, we have to do something. And the way we do it is to show people our community and show people the art, show people the culture, and let people know what's happening in the future for our community as far as development, but also what happened in the past. And I think the other thing that's important too is trying to do our best to talk about the layered history of the area. So we weren't the first people to live in Roxbury as African Americans or Latinx people. There were Native Americans who lived here first. They were the first on this continent. And then we have Europeans that came in, and it's kind of where history starts. When you start to look at your history books, all you see is white people that came in the 16s, 20s, and 30s. That's where history starts. That's where the teachers start to tell you about what history looks like. And that's not necessarily true, and it's really up to you guys as students to kind of do that research on your own, and try to connect with people like me who are actually talking about it. Um, uh, if you don't start to do that research on your own, then it's not going to get passed on to the next generation. And so I think that that's another big thing about what I'm doing too, is hopefully to get you guys, or some of you guys who be interested in history and entrepreneurship and business, to work with me in a bunch of different capacities. It doesn't have to be doing tours. Like, you guys can help me do marketing, press. You guys can help me with social media. I don't know what it looks like to promote and market to you guys. The older crowd, yeah, I can do that. But you guys will probably know how to market to kids that, or sorry, young people like you. Um, I don't know what the new songs are. I don't know how to like put Lil Uzi Vert on the story that has something to do with my business. I'm not saying Uzi Vert's your favorite artist. I'm just trying to connect, or Drake or 21 Savage. Maybe we put a song with that story of me doing a history tour. Maybe that draws in people that look like you guys, um, and at your age. Because I think that that's the big thing for me, is like, I don't have the younger crowd. I don't think about the history of Roxbury or these neighborhoods. And so that's why I'm really happy to be here with you today, just to kind of talk to you about how important history is, because we need to be able to pass it on to the next generation. And you guys are the next generation. And so if I can teach you guys or get you guys motivated about the history of Roxbury and these other neighborhoods, then maybe you guys might be interested in figuring out how to pass that on. But today, what we're gonna do is watch a video. So I created a whole video about the history of Roxbury from my perspective. So I'm not a historian, but I researched a lot of facts about the architecture, about the neighborhood, and about local figures. And I made a whole video in 2020 when everybody was inside. So I was outside filming when nobody was outside, working on this video because I wanted to do a virtual tour because I wasn't able to do physical tours because of COVID. And so I could have just quit and said, you know what, like the tours are not going to work. There's nobody in town. It's just a tour business. This is not it. But I really believe in what I'm doing. And when I got out in 2019, I, I didn't have anything else left, So I was jumping out in the water with no safety nets. This was my passion. This is what I wanted to do. And so when things got rough, I still had to figure out how to keep pushing. And so when things shut down, I still figured out how to use my platform to support the local businesses. And so I would play food, and then I would put it on Instagram, and just like say, hey, you can't go in, but you can get takeout, and try to whatever followers I had, which wasn't much. I only have 1,600 now, but back then I probably had like 500 followers. But I didn't care. Those 500 followers, I wanted them to know that you can still go into these businesses and support them. Because if you don't, they're going to die, right? And so we take advantage, or we take it for granted because we go to these businesses all the time, right? P&R and like Joe Subs and places like that. We go to all the time. It's not a big deal to us, like whatever. But like when everything shut down, it was only us that were going to those businesses, and now we're inside, so we're not going to those businesses that often enough. And what does it look like to have people come from outside of the community and support those businesses while everything is shut down? And so even though we have 500 followers, I wanted to do my part to support the community that I grew up in. And I guess that's what I'm asking you to think about. What can you do to support your community? It doesn't have to be a tour business, um, but what is it that you can contribute? And that's a question you need to ask yourself. Like, how are you going to give back? And just because you're young people doesn't mean that you can't give back. You don't need to be an adult to give back to the community. You can figure out a way to give back as well. And it's something that I want you guys to think about. Obviously, you may not have the answer right now, but if you grew up in any of these neighborhoods and you have pride for those neighborhoods, what are you going to do to make sure that we highlight them in a positive way to kind of combat all of that negative, energy that's coming from the news outlets? Because before you see a really great story, you're going to see the negative story of somebody being stabbed in Mattapan, or a young 12-year-old boy who got shot recently in Mattapan, right? That's what you hear about first. They're not going to talk about the guy who's doing tours of Roxbury to highlight the community, right? Those stories only come during Juneteenth. Those stories come during Black History Month. They don't come during the year throughout the year. It's always placed in a way it's like, oh, this is convenient. And so what I'm trying to do is make sure that there's press all year round about what we're doing in these communities to support them, to support the local businesses, and to talk about our rich history. So that's what this video is about. It's about Union Square. It's a little bit about John Elliott Square up the street where I grew up, and it's about the layered history of the area. So it'll touch on some Native American history, it'll touch on some European history, and it's going to touch on our history as African Americans. And there's so much that I didn't know as a kid about all of the impactful activists and figures who grew up here, who or came here when they were young and made a difference in different ways, whether it's to support the arts, or whether it's to support mothers and children, or whether it's to support the schools, or create another option for us as people of color to go to schools and get a better education elsewhere. So there's just so much history, and I'm still learning each and every day. And I think it's really important that we do our best to kind of know the history of the neighborhoods we grew up in, right? How much can you say that you know about the area? What do you know about Nubian Square? What do you know about Melody and Cass? And how can you apply that to your life? because a lot of the work that they put in, what they're expecting us to do now as their, ancestors, or as they're our ancestors. I like to think of us all as family, even though I'm not related to any of these historical figures. Um, they're looking for us to carry the torch and to figure out what's going to be our way to give back, what's going to be our way to support our community, like they were able to do back in the day. So I really hope you enjoy the video. Again, it's not going to be, it's a history video. And I tried to make it as cool as I possibly could, but it's really to educate you guys about the history that you're not going to learn in the classroom here in the Boston Public Schools. And so another goal for me is to have it, as a part of curriculum, so that teachers can use this video to talk about that local history. And so there's just a lot that I have going on as well. I want to do a theatrical play about some of these historical figures. We're already writing it, almost done, and I want to put it up, and so that you guys can go and see the play to kind of learn more about the lives of these historical figures. So it's not just about doing tours. It's not just about me being a tour guide. It's about me using this tour company to figure out other really creative ways to support and educate the community that's around me. Questions? Or do we do questions and answers after? Are we ready to watch the video at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably is going to be it for right now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you need anything from us? Or?
Just more to make sure that everything works. Just gonna press play and
Yeah, it
give it. So it's not coming up on the screen.
Probably the projector just.
Yeah, I'm just not real tech savvy. I'm sorry. Turn off a few of the lights.
We don't have access to. Oh, I think I heard it. Yeah, we don't have access to turn on page.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure they'd be able to see it. Can you guys see that?
I'll send you. Yeah.
So the lighting is not gonna be, because I want to make sure you can see the screen.
But they can see, but yeah, that's all the lighting.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
They don't let us turn off these things.
Okay, great.
Let's press play.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay.
There you go. Cool.
All right, so we're all set. You all set? We're just gonna watch the video?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Please, if you're on the internet, get off the internet. If you're on my internet, get off the internet.
You have to talk about the sound.
You have it.
Oh, maybe.
Giving back to my community. I went to a predominantly white private school, and I always heard them talk about the school as our community. I realized early on that their idea of me didn't exactly include me. So when I graduated from high school, I decided to take that idea of community and use what I learned as a theater arts major to give back to young people in the Boston area. I started off by getting myself hired as a theater instructor at a local high school, teaching improv and theater exercises, and went on to work as an actor educator for a local theater nonprofit organization, working with hundreds of students around the city. It gave me the opportunity to use my skills to educate and empower us through the arts and the program's curriculum, allowing them to see someone that looked like them and grew up in the same environment on as a performing artist. Now, I'm channeling that idea of community with Live Like a Local Tours Boston that gives people a chance to explore the food, history, and culture of Boston's Roxbury, Dorchester, and Jamaica Plain neighborhoods. Back to my community has been a lifelong mission, so I decided to use the revenue from providing tours and circulate back into the community, connecting people to the neighborhood by telling the history from a native perspective, nurturing and building strong, sustainable relationships with small businesses of color within these neighborhoods. Today, we'll be taking a walk through Roxbury's Nubian Square to introduce you to the food, history, and culture of this neighborhood through my lens. Roxbury was formerly known as the Boston Neck, a narrow piece of land known as an isthmus, which has water on either side and sits between two large areas of land. Roxbury is nearly 400 years old, incorporated by the Puritans in 1630 and becoming its own city in 1846. It was annexed into the city of Boston in 1868 and saw an influx of factories and breweries being built once the marshlands were filled in during the industrial period in the early 19th century. It was the only throughway to get into downtown Boston. At the time, it was called the Shawnee Peninsula, and then became Old Boston. The peninsula was formed by glacial erosion during the Ice Age. Old Boston was made up of three different terrains: Copp's Hill, which was known as the North End, Fort Hill, which is now known as the Financial District, and the Tri-Mountain area, the largest of the three, now known as Beacon Hill, where many African Americans lived in the 18th and 19th centuries. Before it became Nubian Square in December of 2019, it was named Dudley Square, after Thomas Dudley, who was elected governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony 4 times in the early to mid 1600s. In fact, Washington Street was known as Orange Street and was a frequent walking path for Native Americans to come to the water's edge for the summer to fish and hunt and prepare for the winter months. Native Americans, who were called the Massachusetts Nation, inhabited Roxbury long before the Puritans arrived in the 1620s and 30s, living off the land and surrounding water on the Stony Brook and the Ponset rivers. Washington Street was also where the elevated trains were built in 1901 that took you from Sullivan Square in Charlestown all the way into Roxbury. It was renamed after George Washington after he visited on his New England tour in 1769. The reason we're standing here at the corner of Melnia Cass Boulevard and Washington Street is because I'd like to talk to you about who she was and her impact on the Roxbury community. Melnia Cass was known as the First Lady of Roxbury. Born in 1896 in Richmond, Virginia, she moved to Boston during the Great Migration. In 1906, her mother passed away and she was moved in with her aunt, who sent her to Newburyport to live with her employer's family to go to grammar school. She then returned to the South to go to secondary school, where she did well and graduated valedictorian of her class, despite the racism she faced as a Black girl in the South. The discrimination she experienced as a Black woman eventually drove her into activism when she returned to Boston, realizing that racism and discrimination were alive and well in the North. In 1933, William Monroe Trotter organized a demonstration urging African American employers to hire African American workers, in which Cass participated. It was her first demonstration. Her mother-in-law, activist and women's suffragist, Rosa Brown, introduced her to organizations such as the NAACP and the Women's Service Club, in which Brown was a co-founder. After casting her vote, she went on to galvanize other women to exercise their right to do so after the passage of the 19th Amendment. She held positions on many boards and tenants groups in Roxbury to fight for affordable housing and equal rights. She was president and sat on the board of the Boston chapter of the NAACP. She founded the Boston chapter of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, helping local railroad workers of color fight for equal rights and pay. She was the first woman appointed to the ABCD program, an anti-poverty community development and human resources program started in 1961, which helped people of color who were displaced by urban renewal, aka gentrification. During World War II, she helped organize Women in Community Service, which became Boston's sponsor to the Job Corps. She has honorary doctorates from Simmons, Northeastern, and Boston College. Governor Volt declared May 22nd Melody and Cass Day in 1966 for all her contributions. This boulevard is fitting for such an extraordinary woman because you can't come in or out of Roxbury without seeing her name. Another notable woman in Roxbury's history is Ruth Batson, who was a huge advocate for the desegregation of the Boston public schools and a fair and equal playing field for Black and brown youth in Roxbury. Born in Roxbury to Jamaican parents in 1921, she graduated from Boston Latin and went on to graduate from Boston University with her master's in education. Batson became chairwoman of the Public Education Subcommittee and was also a lobbyist for civil rights as a member of the NAACP. Batson was the first Black woman on the Democratic National Committee and the first woman to be elected president of the NAACP's New England Regional Conference. She helped launch and became executive director of the METCO program in 1966, which allowed children of color from underserved communities to go to suburban schools to get a better education. In the 1960s, children of color in Boston's inner city neighborhoods were receiving a poor education and got the bare necessities when it came to money and resources. And this was only 60 years ago, and we're still dealing with the same educational disparities today in the city of Boston. As a member of the leadership team, she helped grow METCO from transporting 220 Black children to several suburbs to 1,100 children to 28 communities. Her continuous efforts to push for a better education for Black children in Boston has made a lasting impact in this community. Elma Lewis, known as the Grand Dame of the Arts in Roxbury, was born in 1915 in Roxbury to parents who immigrated from Barbados. As a young girl, she attended the Ruggles Street Nursery School. Her parents were told by her teacher that she had a higher IQ than she would have when she got older. Imagine being told you would never be any smarter than you were as a toddler. It's something that young kids from this community dealt with during that time on a regular basis in the 1920s. It's something they still deal with on many levels today. Connecting how people of color were treated as less than and how disappointing it is that nothing has really changed when we talk about the overall perception of children of color's ability to learn at a high level. Having white people in power attack their self-esteem and their ability to dream of being successful in life just because of where they live and what they look like. It stuck with her, and she used that as fuel during the rest of her academic career. She attended Roxbury Memorial High School for Girls, where she studied voice, piano, and dance. She worked her way through college by acting in local theater productions, graduating from Emerson College in 1943, and getting her master's in education at Boston University. In 1950, Lewis founded the Elma Lewis School of Fine Arts to provide arts and education for the African-American community in Boston with a focus on visual and performing arts. The school enrolled over 700 students and employed 100 of the most talented teachers in the creative arts program. The annual production of Langston Hughes' Black Nativity became a staple of the organization and was directed every year by Lewis herself. Ms. Lewis's work brought many famous figures to Boston and to her students. People like Muhammad Ali, actors like Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, Eartha Kitt, musicians like Nina Simone, and many other stellar personalities made a point of visiting her center. Lewis developed the technical theater program at the Massachusetts Correctional Institute. 750 inmates at Norfolk State Prison were enrolled in a program that put on performances, and they learned skills such as set design and musical composition. She started the Elma Lewis Playhouse in Franklin Park during the summer months, which boasted artists such as Duke Ellington, a jazz pianist, and other prominent musicians of the day. Behind me is the National Center for African American Artists, founded by Lewis in 1968, where she collaborated with the Museum of the Fine Arts to curate exhibits for artists of color from around the world. Ms. Lewis also received the Commonwealth Award, Massachusetts' highest award in the arts. In 1983, she received the Presidential Medal for Arts from President Ronald Reagan, and she was the first Black woman to receive the MacArthur Award, which was known as the Genius Grant for her work in the arts. She was also honored by nearly 30 colleges and universities with doctorates from places like Harvard and Brown. Ms. Lewis was a driving force in the arts, not only in Roxbury, but across the world. Another notable woman is Mimi Jones, born on May 4th, 1947. A civil rights activist who fought for racial justice and equality, participating in protests in her hometown of Oakfield, Georgia, at a very young age. She sought out marches across the South and even helped raise money for MLK's March on Washington. Her biggest impact on the civil rights movement came at the age of 17 in 1964, when she was called on by MLK to do a swim-in at the Munson Motor Inn in St. Augustine, Florida. White allies got rooms at the hotel and gave a heads up for Mrs. Jones and 5 others to jump into the pool to protest against racial discrimination. The owner then proceeded to dump acid into the pool while they were swimming, and an iconic picture was plastered all over the New York Times and the Washington Post, among other national news outlets. It is said that the picture was one of the major turning points to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. White America was once again awakened by the hatred inflicted upon Black Americans by pictures and videos that can't be ignored. I want to tie in the connection to how America hasn't really changed at all. We're still watching people of color being murdered. It was the newspapers and television in the 60s, and now it's your social media platforms, computers, and mobile devices. Emmett Till was killed in 1955 for allegedly whistling at a white man while visiting his family in Mississippi. He was beaten to death by a group of white men until his face was unrecognizable. His mother decided to have him put in a casket so America could see what they did to her son. Rodney King was severely beaten by police in the early 1990s during a traffic stop in Los Angeles. It was videotaped by a witness and was evidence that some policemen used their power to brutally beat Mr. King instead of serving and protecting him. George Floyd was killed by a police officer who held his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It was recorded by onlookers so we could see the hate this officer held in his heart for Mr. Floyd. Capturing events of racism and hate is nothing new in this country, and Mimi Jones was willing to sacrifice her freedom for justice and equality on that day in St. Augustine. She later moved here to study political science at UMass Boston and went on to be a grant writer for nonprofits, as well as being a champion for literacy efforts to help people of color in and around the Roxbury community.
You may be asking yourself why I'm standing in a supermarket parking lot right now. Well, it's because I want to tell you the story of a Cuban immigrant by the name of Pastor Medina.
Medina owned a small market in Cuba before the rule of Fidel Castro forced him to flee the country in 1961, with his wife and 2 daughters and only the clothes on their backs. He arrived in Roxbury with a drive and determination to have his own market. He worked for 13 years to save up, and in 1974, in this building right here, he opened up a storefront called El Plantanero, which means banana, which is what the community dubbed him because he only sold green bananas and sweet plantains. A few years later, his brother came from Cuba to help him diversify by starting to sell produce, vegetables, and meats. They ran it together until 1987, when his son-in-law took it over and coined it Tropical Fruits. In the late 90s, early 2000s, the son-in-law passed it on to grandsons. This market is a staple in the community because immigrants from all over the Caribbean and parts of Africa get ingredients they need to cook food.
Still to this day, fruits and vegetables you can't get at Whole Foods or at Trader Joe's, which is why this book was so important to the residents of Roxbury. I love telling that story because it's an example of the countless immigrants of color who dedicated their lives to creating generational wealth for themselves and for their families within this community. Now let's take a look inside and see the market that Pastor Medina built.
Bryant transitioned into a director role for the Health Vocational Training Program at the Denver Community Health Center based in Roxbury. In 1978, he became the Associate Dean of Student Affairs at Northeastern University before becoming the VP. O'Brien welcomed many African Americans to the Northeastern community.
Behind me is the John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Sciences. He was also honored by Northeastern, and that honor is well deserved. Behind me is the William Lloyd Garrison House. William Lloyd Garrison was an abolitionist who fought to rid the country of slavery. To get his message out, he started a paper called The Liberator in 1832. Garrison was born in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and was a huge advocate of the women's suffrage movement and the civil rights movement. He was also a mentor to a man like
Has it been doing much of this? Or I mean, I know it's been doing a lot, but not this long, right?
by the name of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was an American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman. After escaping slavery in Maryland, he became the national leader of the abolitionist movement in Massachusetts and New York, becoming famous for his oratory and incisive anti-slavery writings. Douglass was a firm believer in the equality of all people, be they white, black, female, Native American, or Chinese immigrants. Garrison has set up public forums across the country for Douglass to speak about his time as a slave to encourage other white abolitionists to do more to end slavery across the nation. He also held positions in government as the first African American to be the ambassador to the Dominican Republic and to cast a vote for the President of the United States in 1888. Douglass went on to create his own newspaper called the North Star, paying homage to slaves escaping via the North Star in the sky, which led them on a path to freedom.
This is Frugal Books, one of 3 minority-owned bookstores in Massachusetts. Many of the bookstores in Boston lack a wide variety of books that tell the stories of people of color. It's important that Frugal Books continues to be a mainstay in Nubian Square to provide Black and brown literature written by authors who write from that perspective. So instead of buying books from Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, I go out my way to support this local bookstore in my community. If you're ever in Nubian Square, I encourage you to stop by and buy a book to support them, or you can find them online. This is Hibernian Hall, originally known as an Irish dance hall. The 4-story brick building was designed by Edward Thomas Patrick Grant and built in 1913 for the Ancient Order of Hibernians, an Irish Catholic fraternal organization. It's now a hub for African American expression, serving as a venue for playwrights, artists, and dancers to showcase their talents to the community. This is Suya Joe. It's an African restaurant with an amazing menu of traditional cuisine. I really encourage you to check it out. Welcome to P&R, Jamaican Restaurant, which stands for pride and respect. It's been serving the community for over 30 years, opening their first restaurant in the Mattapan neighborhood of Boston and expanding to Roxbury 4 years ago. The food is amazing. I love the Jamaican beef patties, and I always grab some ice cream from the parlor for dessert. If you're ever in the area, you should definitely stop by.
Well, that concludes the Nubian Square walking tour. I hope you enjoyed learning about the food, history, and culture of one of Boston's most historic neighborhoods. I'm Colin Knight. Thank you for watching, and I'm looking forward to taking you on a tour in person real soon.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, drone footage. I noticed that in drone footage. Especially when it was looking on top and going like this and that.
Thank you guys for watching. I know that was a lot of information to take in.
Cause they've been note taking, haven't they? Right, good job.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot to take notes on. But I hope you did take something from it and to have a chance to kind of learn about some of the African American figures who have made a difference. Maybe you knew about some of these people or maybe you didn't. So I'm just happy.
Did anybody know about anything that he said? Like, anybody want to share some of the things that stood out?
I just like the whole video, and I just like how like I went to the charter. I'm always like going by these things. So I just never knew who they were. So it's very good like learning about them. And just like places I go like PNR, tropical foods. Like I remember going to like the tropical food market when it was like in Dudley, and then they shut it down and made the whole tropical food supermarket. So it's just kind of seeing how everything plays out.
Yeah, same for me. Like I never knew like the history and like the gifts of how I was living, and I think I took that for granted, and so now to see it and to know about it makes it more significant and more special.
I learned about like new people and like new events, like such as like Ruth Baxton. I didn't know about her before, like prior to this, and I'm like now learning like new things about her that I didn't, learn back then and prior to this. So I think that's cool.
Anybody else? Oh, y'all knew everything, huh? All right, all right. What about, let us, look now, take a lens back and look at Mr. Knight as a businessman. All right, so we've seen the content, right? That's his hard work, right? And please, just give it up for him. Just give it up for him. All right? So we now have, but now let's take a bigger lens. Because our dream, and the reason why me and him do this kind of work is so that young people like you can be like him or me in the next 10 years, right? So what stood out to you about his business approach, his presentations, right? And we're gonna go around in our circle format and you can pass. Okay, you have one here during restorative. So basically what happens in restorative practice, we hand it around and all you have to say, you can, share, and if you don't want to share, you can say I pass, and then go to the next person, all right? We don't force anybody to say stuff here, but please. So what about his business? Like, what do you see from the business marketing and all that stuff? Pass it around.
I liked how he like did this whole like video and presentation thing. I felt like it was very it's like he did it like in an interesting way. Like he shared it like in a more educational way and more approachable. So he went to these places and he went to like these locations and he shared the history and how they work and operate. And I think that's like really cool.
Yes. You have to say I pass.
Yes.
You don't want to say nothing, Mr. Trisha? You pass? All right.
I think that the way he does his business, like with the tour guide, out of all things to like choose tours, like you don't see a lot of people do that, especially in Boston. Yeah, like the duck boats, like the one that take you downtown and whatnot, and that's like all people know about like tour guides. So see that there's more to it than just that, and on top of that, it's in like a high level of like people of color area where it's like it's only been, for the most part, at least, mostly been Black people in this area. It's a place where not a lot of people have like background knowledge on completely unless you like lived here all your life. It's a place where it's been changed a lot, like in Nubian Square, like when we had the orientation, Mr. Solomon was talking about how the Nubian changed a lot, like before, like that, before the, he said before the library was over there, it used to be like a church. And so there's a lot of other places that are in the area that you give tours to that a lot have been changed.
and it's nice to see that you're still giving history and information about it.
I noticed the dedication that he put into it, going to all of these places, like taking time to learn about it, because you have to research about it. And it was just, I like how he set up the video, showed us where each place was. And yeah,
Yeah, I like completely agree. Like you could have like done a video with just you and put like the places in the background, but you went and walked there and like you talked about the owners and the people and their stories. Like I would have never known at all. And I just like the dedication is just great. Excellent.
Um, I learned a lot actually. I used to live by Melina Cass. Melanie, I always pronounce it wrong. I never knew her story, right? I used to shop at Tropicals. I came to this country like back in 2000 from Africa. So I used to get my little snacks as a kid from Tropicals when it was in the corner. So like hearing this story, it was like very inspirational. And like how rich the history and culture is in Roxbury. I always go to like Beacon Hill, like the Freedom Trail, I think. I've done that, the Duck tours, but then like right exactly where you live is so much history and culture. So that was kind of dope. Also like choosing tour as a business is like, it's not sexy, right? It's not cool. So it's like a really like, it's actually cool, actually, when you really think about it. So I also like the merch. Do you have merch? I like that. That's dope. So thank you, appreciate it.
Carl? Actually, one of the funny stories is, when I met him, when you're in this work, kind of like go to the same places and you meet the same people and you're involved in the same, kind of activities. So one day I'm like, in Roxbury, I don't know what I was doing, just chilling in my car, and guess who I see going by? Is Mr. Kunai with the tour group, right? And I told him, because I'm very upfront around it. I was like, that cemented it for me in my heart that this guy's gonna be proud. I'm working with him, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm not gonna, because it's the everyday walking around. That is, like Jasmine said, she identified that you were working. Like this is not just, okay, I like it, and then the dedication that it takes to do this kind of work, and it's actually so important. And I hope you guys see, when you think of tours, everybody said it, think of Duck, think of all that. But there's so much history going on that happened in our communities. That's an opportunity, right? That's an opportunity.
I have a question about the tours. How do you do the tours? Like, do you guys all walk around and take public transportation, or do you have like a private vehicle that you bring?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started off in 2020 or 2019. That's when I started the company. And I thought it was a charter tours, like it's gonna take people to all three neighborhoods. It was like a 4 hour plus tour. It was crazy. It's just a lot to take in for 4 hours because you're from like from Roxbury to Dorchester to everything. But once the pandemic hit, everything shut down. I wasn't gonna be able to get people in van. It's got masks on. People worried about getting COVID, so I had to revamp. And what I came up with is walking towards each neighborhood. And I was like, well, instead of doing this band tour around all three, I'm just gonna split the neighborhoods up, and you'll get a chance to experience the food and culture of each neighborhood. Highlight those neighborhoods separately, so people can choose what neighborhood they want to go. And why that's important is because each of these neighborhoods have different history and different culture. We're known as a segregated city in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of cultures that live there. I think we're a super small version of New York. We're not as integrated as New York, right? We're more segregated, but that doesn't mean that we don't have all these different cultures that live here. And so I think it was just up to me to figure out like what is going to be a creative way to kind of highlight these neighborhoods separately. And so we all know that obviously Elliot Square is that center of Black history and culture. We have Jamaica Plain High Square, which is known as, the Latinx quarter. And then in Dorchester, when we think about Dudley Street, Roxbury Line, that's known as the Cape Verdean culture. And so They're also geographically closest to downtown. So when I was thinking about a tour business, I was trying to figure out how to get tourists from downtown up to these neighborhoods. So I chose the 3 neighborhoods that were closest to the downtown area. And eventually, people ask me all the time, what are you gonna do Mattapan, Hyde Park? And I'm like, I definitely want to get out there, but you need a vehicle to do that. So I think that's the next thing, is like to maybe work with Marlon and try to see how we can use his nonprofit status to get a van so that then he can do his work to get you around the city, but then I can also use it to do charter tours so we can explore more of Roxbury and more of the other neighborhoods across the Boston area.
Which is why I need workers to be doing the work and doing the hard work and being also tour guides. And we need people like that. So you know how we, like I said, so you guys, give you guys opportunities. These are some of the opportunities that we're looking to develop. Of course, we just started, we really just cemented like this here. But, and it's a process. This is the first part of that process. Getting me in front of you guys to understand that, how would I say, you guys work with me from now to you're 24, right? I'm saying that all the time, all the time, right? Hopefully by the time, once I'm out, wanna work with Mr. Collins, I'll be running around, getting darker and knowing what.
And I was saying before too, Marlon, like it doesn't have to be you guys from the tours.
Right.
Like I said, we talked about it earlier, you can do social media.
Right.
You can do marketing.
Right.
There's all different types of things that we can do, administrative work. So there's a lot that can be done. It's not just, oh, you have to be a tour guide. So
Right.
when I think about entrepreneurship, people think about it's just the thing or the service of the product,
Right.
but it's actually all of the other things that go around that.
Right.
Like I have to be in the office every day, getting on emails to talk to people who are interested in booking the tours. Then I have to do Zoom meetings to pitch the tour. Even though they want to do it, they still want to hear you pitch it.
Right.
So they're convinced. They're already convinced though, because that's why they call it.
Right.
And so when you think about the customer, right? They're calling you and saying, hey, I want to do this tour, but I want to know more about it. They just need some more
Right.
questions, right? So you already have the sale, but you still gotta complete the sale, right?
Yeah.
But what you do need to know as an entrepreneur, if they're contacting you, then they're already thinking about buying the service of the product.
Right.
But how are you going to seal the deal? And
Right.
so it's all this administrative work that goes around that, and all of the packaging, all of the flyers, things you have to put together to make sure that if people say they want to do a tour, then I have a description of each neighborhood. And I email them that, say, hey, this is what you're going to get on this tour. You'll see murals, you'll get food, you'll learn about history, culture, and hopefully that seals the deal with them. But you need all of those things in order to be able to market it to a potential client or customer.
So they would pay for it and everything on that tour is paid for, like.
Yes, it's all inclusive. That's the other thing too. It's like, it's an all inclusive package. So I feel like you don't have to spend any more money unless you want to, right? So if you get the Nubian Square tour, you get something from the tropical beef market, you get a patty. But then along the tour, if you see something, if you go to the bookstore, you want to buy a book, and then it's not just about that time. So if you guys take the tour, that's great. But what I'm also trying to do is, how do I get repeat business, not for myself, but for the local businesses? So what ends up happening is after we do one tour or we finish the tour, I'm going back to get my stuff in Tropical Foods. And I see the people I just did the tour with in Tropical Foods buying more products, right? And so they're coming back to the places that I talked to them about. And so that's, I think, the value that I think a lot of people don't understand about what I'm doing. It's not just about the tour itself. It's about me bringing people to the community and saying, no, you can come to shop here, you don't need it. And so they start to order from P&R, they buy books from Food, right? And so it's all about that repeat business that has nothing to do with me, but everything to do with highlighting this so that these people that come from outside the community will come back and put more money into it and keep circulating dollars for us.
Do you do it alone?
Yes, I'm the only person working, but I take people that help me with all my Instagram. Calculated, so I like to plan out what the post is going to look like when it comes out on Saturday. So I'll get a picture and I'll say, okay, this is a picture of somebody doing a tour. How do we market this? How do I want to play this? And I figure out my social media team, what's the best way to do that? Do we put a video or a testimonial with it? How is that going to go? Eventually, I'll be posting 5 times a day. You know what I mean? But I just can't afford to pay social media to do that many times. So right now, I'm just doing once a week, and I put it on all my social media platforms. So yeah, it's one post, but it goes to Instagram, it goes to LinkedIn, it goes to Facebook, it goes to Twitter. So all of those people, and we have those are different markets. So there's a difference between Instagram and LinkedIn. Instagram is more you guys, or younger people, or people who are just kind of doing their thing. But LinkedIn's more business. So I'm really trying to see what corporations are out there. What does that look like, right? And seeing and I've gotten a lot of business from universities and stuff because of LinkedIn. Because they'll start seeing your stuff and be like, oh, I really like that. I've been watching you for a long time, but I haven't said anything. So that's what social media is really important for as well. Is because even though people aren't contacting you, they're watching, right? Whatever you guys put on social media, believe you me, they are watching. So it's important that you understand that the content that you put out is being what's part of your reputation, right? So you out here getting lit on Instagram, in the future, when you're about to go to college, that they might look back at that and try to use it against you. So have fun, but be very, very intentional about what posts, right? You don't have to post everything, right? Because it can be used when you're trying to get a job. That's how it works. It can work for you or cautious. Yeah, be cautious for sure. But yeah, those are great questions though, for sure. But yeah, have any other questions? Just about business. It doesn't have to be about.
That's where we are.
For the business aspect, can we go back to the social media stuff? How do you necessarily run your social medias for your business? Do you post regularly, or is it in a way that can draw customers in, or what advice do you have for putting out a social media for a particular business that you want to?
Yeah, so for my business, for that tour business, I'm constantly trying to push home food history and culture, right? So it's important that your business has some sort of tagline. What is your elevator pitch? You guys know what an elevator pitch is? So elevator pitch is if you want somebody to buy your product and they ask you about your business. So you say, hey, Colin, how you doing? And you're like, yeah, I do tours. So like, what tours? Well, what is that? I'm like, oh, well, it gives people a chance to experience the food, history, and culture of neighborhoods like Roxbury, Dorset, Jamaica Plain. There it is. Then, oh, well, tell me more about that, or send me some information. Now I get to the second stage. Now, what's your email address? I send an email address, and when I send you that email, I send you all the marketing materials. Now you know exactly what I do. You know exactly what it is. You know exactly what my mission is. And now I'm just waiting to get the sale. So now it's up to you to go to your people to figure out whether you want to buy. But I've done all of my work. You have to have your elevator pitch. It takes 10 seconds. You don't have more time than that, right? And so you want to put a quick pitch, and that just sets you up for the pitch when you get on the call, right? So, and then social media, I don't have the money to post a bunch of times. So I have 2 people that are working for me. They don't live in Boston, but they live in 2 different places. One lives in Louisiana, one lives in Florida. But I've been working with my social media person since 2019. And so what happens is that you have to teach them about your brand. Who are you? What is so that they can reflect that in their social media. So it took a while for my social media person to actually understand how to speak like me if you're doing captions, because I don't do the captions anymore. But you have to know me in order to be able to write a caption. So it might take some time. And so I think we're in a really good pocket right now where we're putting out content and people really like it. And those 2 social media people really understand what my mission is and what I'm fighting for. It. So they're able to reflect that within the social media. But I'm only posting once. I should be doing my own post, just on the camera, just to do stuff. But I don't. I should be, and you guys should do that, right? But for me, I don't want any followers that aren't connected to the mission. I only have 1,600 followers for a reason, because I'm not doing a bunch of goofy stuff on social media to get followers. You either follow me or you don't. And that's what a mission-driven business is all about. I could care less about social media. I care about doing the work. But social media is what's going to get me more customers. So my team is always pushing me to be out there more. But I'm always kind of attracted because I'm like, no, I'm just doing the work. And if you're doing the work, then you'll follow me. Right? I believe in supporting my community. Do you do that? Then you follow me. If you don't, then don't follow me. Because it doesn't matter. It only matters that you work for my community. But if you're thinking of growing $1 million business, you need social media. So that's what they're continuously trying to get into my head. It's like, no, you still have to do this. I know you don't care about that, but if you want to grow, it's only going to be you doing other things to kind of get the word out. Struggle.
It's because a lot of people are visual learners. They don't understand what they don't understand like what the point of you doing something is unless they see it physically.
I know it
over and over and over again. And that I think that social media is what triggers them to follow you.
Yeah,
because they keep popping up. Like that's the same person. So that doesn't grow you. Also like you don't have to make a post when you put like on your story like that or like put posts right now or you do it like you do it like I can. Doesn't matter what if I think that it could be good for somebody else. I try to push it out and say, hey, I know this person who does this. And I want to, I'm not, I see it. To me, it feels like you know, posting about what you're doing, and that's not really like I don't really brag about that's the work, and I do really respect it, but I don't want to like put this justification like this is what he's doing. It's just not, unless I do what you said, I'm not getting the 10,000 plus followers that I really would like to have. Those 10,000 followers to really believe. But I don't want you to follow me just because it matters to me, like what I do. And if you care about the follow, but if not, I don't want just followers, right? There's a lot of celebrities that got people to follow just because they don't know them, they don't care anything about what they do with their mission. It's just they're a fan, right? Like, and I'm not. That's just not my thing. So I think that that's the biggest thing I'm struggling with social media is trying to figure out. There's a lot more that you can do. Just like constantly, like you can start your own kind of like write a book or something like that. Post it on there, like yeah, a book. Yeah, that should invest in buying, or maybe you can start a podcast for like a live thing where
That's what I've been thinking about. That's a great idea.
and talking about the history and information that you give based on the stuff that you do. Tour guides, and that way people that are joining, if they don't know who you are or what you do or why you do it, they'll listen to the podcast because they want to know more.
Yeah, that's why I need you guys.
Are you on TikTok?
I am, but barely though. We're still like kind of getting TikTok going. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get like a lot of like people to do like, it's like a whole trend thing. So you can get people like, oh, I'm gonna go do a tour today. So like, there's a whole market out there.
Yeah.
They'll be like, let's try something new. Like yesterday, we did something new. I did a lot of new things yesterday. So like they'll use that to push it forward. Like I did something new today. I toured Roxbury with this. So like there's a whole market out there that just loves to just put stuff out there. So take advantage of that. And also like finding ways to personalize the story, right? You don't necessarily like, I used to feel like that when I used to post like, I don't want to brag,
Right.
but like I still people want to see the work that I'm doing. So I have to find a way to tell it in my own voice. So it's like comfortable with me. So whenever I record something like this, does this feel right with me? Does it align with me? And then hit the post. If it doesn't, it's like delete. So finding a way to like find your
to
voice,
feel good about it.
finding your voice in the digital world is very difficult.
Yeah. I'm always worried about the way the content is going to come off.
Yeah.
right? Because you can lose followers that way too. If people feel like you're just out here just posting like, oh, look at me, like that's, it could look a certain way, or at least I feel that way. But when I look at most people's social media, they're just out there like, hey, look at where I'm at. This is what I did, or I did this for the kids. Here I am. And I mean, for me, it's just I need to get over that hump. Like, so I think once I do, and I figure out how to do more posting just on my own, without my social media team that does it once a week, I think that I could, I could probably get more followers.
This would be a great content. If you had someone right now getting you,
That
that would be a nice
They're
great
always
content
gonna
right
give it to me.
It's already online.
Just you
It's
telling
already
you.
online. No, like, so guys, you can see here, I think one of the things I'm getting, and we do have a social media team. We'll be doing, posts and other things based on the stuff that we're doing for today. So like, that's why all of that information, you guys didn't fill out your forms from yesterday. So I'm sure you have great footage from all of that. This slide, yeah, they went all out yesterday. It was real nice. They were real nice. But they're mad. He's even like, even though we're a bit older, we're like the albatrosses. Most people in our generation, social media, can you help me post on my Facebook? Like they don't have no idea. There's whole restaurant chains. I'll say one now, Las Vegas, because I went there and I'm trying to.
Social media pages. Yeah.
Got nothing, because these guys like 60 something, you don't get, right? So this is something that I hope that will be something that we as African American Academy will be able to provide as a service. We get paid, but you have to be able to show up, right? One thing that's going on now, I'm seeing, I'm not very happy with it. We have very nice notebooks here. Those notebooks and the note taking, so that when you talk to him, you can write a great post about all the things he talked about today. So it's not enough to just say, okay, yeah, I'm good social media, I like social media, but we are giving you the tools right now in order for you to give a great post. So if you guys have been listening, then now we're going to try and jog our memories. You're not using the tool we just taught you, but that's fine, because that's why we're here to practice it, right? There are different parts of the post. There's when you guys look at your social media, that's one thing I want to say. Everything about social media, you are being exposed to every day, right? It's always somebody trying to sell something to you. It's always somebody trying to give you another post. There are hashtags you're seeing. What is the post? Okay, anybody can tell me, quick one. What is hashtags about? What are hashtags? What do they do? Chain you to communities. Chain you to communities, very good one. Any other options? Any other? What is a hashtag? You see all the hashtags? You got social media, not me.
I use it for search.
Search tool, all right. Connecting with other people. So it's a marketing tool, bringing certain communities together, right? So we're not going to go into too much. We'll talk about that next week when we start talking about the tools for the work that we do. But remember what he said earlier. This goes very important. And I'll let him finish. And you got so, yeah, right. I want anybody want to bust a couple of bars. But when you think of the business, where there's a rapper, right? Think of a rapper, right? Do you know all the businesses? Remember yesterday when we were going on the tour guide, I told you guys to look at the different jobs that were existing, the hit guy telling the tour, the young people teaching, the people selling concessions. All those are jobs people are getting paid for because of the tour. So just like he said, when you go to a rap concert, the rapper might be the least paid person paid there. There's an engineer. There's the person that rented the sound equipment, the stage. There's the marketing. Even what about all the studio work and the editing? These are all jobs that come from the basic cultural artifacts. All right. So yes, you may need the cultural artifacts and locations to bring people together. But to create the business, you need a whole plethora of different things to make up the business. And so we're here to give you the tools and provide you and expose you to the equipment. We're streaming right now on YouTube. Nobody's watching because we didn't advertise. That's good. So like right now, if you go onto our YouTube page, you'll see us there. Okay? So that's part of it. Now you will have clips and we'll hopefully get, Angel. So we're gonna have a social media team. I think, Nash, the older ones are already grandfathered in because they just are. Some of the people that have been here before can always join the after hour stuff, okay? But the idea is, these are all the skills, but you're gonna need to take notes from what he said to put into, you're gonna miss whole elements of what he said, right? So if you weren't taking notes, you're gonna be checking notes, like almost every Friday. Who needs help learning how to check notes? So when you're going to college, you're going to be listening to way more boring people than you. That's for sure. You go, I'm tired, I'm not doing good. Guess what? You have finals. Who cares? That's college life. Note taking that I'm trying, that's why those things exist. It's not because we just want to give you some frivolous work. I told you, nothing in this program is a waste. I don't teach nothing extra bonus like geometry, extra stuff that is, trying to see how it, no. Everything is basic level, but you're gonna practice it so we're excellent at it, right? So when he comes, maybe next time, you guys can write notes, put a great social media post, put the hashtags, put the other things involved, so you guys can all be successful. So I'll let him finish up. If anybody else wants to say anything, please let us, say it now. I know that it started a little late, so we're supposed to get at 11, but we'll go until you guys get tired or whatever. Let's start speaking. Go ahead.
Sorry, sir.
Put it on.
Oh.
It might be on.
How much how do you figure out the pricing for like each tour to do?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's based on like what type of package they want. It's not necessarily based on the neighborhood. So if you want add-ons, like so for adults, right? A lot of breweries and distilleries are popping up in these areas through gentrification. When I was growing up, they would have never thought to have a brewery or distillery in these areas, right? So now it's like really the kind of the trendy things to do. So what I did was I added those to my tours. So I said, okay, it's a Nubian Square tour. You get the history and you may want a cold beer. So here's the brewery tours. Here's the Roxbury Brewery tour. And then I said, you know what? There's a distillery in the area too, so we can end up there after you get all the history and culture. So here's the liquor tour, right? And then you have the regular tour is $60. It's the all-inclusive tour that you get snacks and a P&R patty and all that food history and culture. So that's the base tour. That's $60. The beer tour is $85. And the distillery tour is $100. Right? So it's these three different prices. And what you'll do, the difference in the first tour, that's $60, you get a few snacks. But the brewery and distillery tours, you get like a plate of food from the local restaurant. So I'll get orders a week before, a couple of days before. I'll work with the restaurant and chef and say, hey, this is what I want, and I'll order it in advance. So as we're along the tour route, we finish the tour, we go into that local business. I'm like, hey, when we talked about it, and then everyone has their dish that they order with their name on it. We take that and we go to the facility to talk, and then for adults, we have libations. So those are the three different packages right now that I have. And people would say this, it's a little bit expensive, but what I say is it's not about the food, right? It's about the cognitive that I have to remember the history and culture of the area. You would never know it. So when people try to lowball me and think that I let them know what you're paying for is what I know here. And you're paying for my perspective about the neighborhood. That's what you're paying for. You're not paying for the chiller and the patio. Now you're taking the tour. But that's extra. What you're paying for is me. So I cost $60. That's what it costs. And so that's the other thing in being an entrepreneur, having integrity. Like, and not letting people like lowball you, right? You know what you cost. So if it's $60, it's $60. That's it. Because otherwise, what people are gonna do, oh, that's too much. How could you do it for $40? Can you do it for $35? You already set your price. Your price is your price.
And you got to be willing to roll with that, right? Because otherwise, you're never going to get to where you want to be, right? So the people that believe in it are going to pay for it. There's a lot of people who won't pay for it. They'll go downtown and pay $30 for the Freedom Trail because they don't see the value of what I'm doing because there's no marketing, people don't know about me, so they don't want to pay it. But I say, okay, you don't want to pay it. The people that believe in what I do, they are going to pay it. But you do want to be flexible. So if there's a bunch of people, right? If I got 25 plus people and they ask me for something, I'm like, oh, you know, I can give you $10 off, right? And so I set my prices that high so that if I have to give a discount, I still have a large profit margin, you know, because it's really about my cognitive ability. I'm talking for 2 hours to these people, right? That's a lot of like mental like energy that I'm expending, and I need to get my money for it. And so when you're starting what you're worth, what it costs to make your product or to do your service, and then you got to figure out what your profit margin is going to be and what they're willing to pay. But look at Louis Vuitton though, right? Louis Vuitton, they charge what they want to charge, right? They're going for a certain market. That bag is $1,500, and that's what it is. If you can't afford it, then be out. That's how I'm trying to do my thing. I'm trying to be Louis Vuitton and tourists. You know what I mean? Because it's about the brand, right? And if you are willing to market your brand as a luxury brand, then you can't the tops. So I hope that answered the question. That was great. Yeah.
Any other questions? Any other things you want to say? All right, well, I want you guys to, oh, we got one now.
Okay, well, I'm not sure, because I have kind of like multiple questions, I'll just ask one. So, I wasn't aware of everything because I didn't come, or I was kind of late, but for your tours, like, how do you decide what exactly to talk about? Because I know that you do like these tours with the specific neighborhoods, but like, how do you decide like what timeline specifically to talk about in terms of the history and what's important and what you think other people find interesting?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Thank you. So what I do is I try to, first of all, I want to talk about the neighborhood's history, right? Like the layered history, like these neighborhoods weren't Black neighborhoods or Latinx neighborhoods always, right? So you want to let people know that, like, oh, I'm not just like the Black tour guide. I'm just going to tell you that I've been studying, and so I know about the layered. And I think the other thing is that I try to keep people engaged through the art and the culture and the buildings, right? So it's more interesting to you if you can see it. So if you go to the Martin Luther King mural, right, that's while visually, right, you're able to look at the mural, it means more to you than me just standing at a corner telling you about the facts of Martin, right? So I've realized is that it's really about what people can see and what they can touch. And so if I'm going by the cemetery or the firehouse or any of the buildings, I can be able to talk about that. You can see it and you build a connection. And then also like, you know, the supermarket, P&R, being able to tell their story and talk about them and their journey as an entrepreneur makes the customer more connected. Now I could just go into the supermarket and get you some snacks and we could eat, right? But it won't mean as much. But when I tell you the story of Pastor Medina, and I'm like, you know, this is what he did. He came from Cuba. He got away from that, built something for his family, and it's still here today. And then you go in the supermarket and we can look at the pictures, and I'm saying, look, remember, this is what I was telling you. Now it means more to you. So I try to build my tours around that. And that's kind of how, like, in each neighborhood, I learn about that history, right? Next neighborhood is the same thing. It's just talking about when they came in, but also talking about the Europeans and the Americans that came before. But what is the struggle now? Gentrification is the struggle in each of these neighborhoods. So we tie in the gentrification and generational wealth to connect to what's happening in the present, so that people understand that, yes, I'm giving you the food history and culture of the neighborhoods, but we're also dealing with a lot of struggles too. Dealing with addiction, we're dealing with homelessness, we're dealing with poor schools, right? We're dealing with all these issues, and then through the things that I'm talking about, I'm able to touch on those issues. So when I talk about Metco, then I'm able to connect it to the Boston Public Schools and say, hey, I wish that they could do a little better. Because we can look at the 1960s in Boston Public Schools and the lack of resources, or we can look at 2023 and the lack of resources. So what are we doing as a city?
Right.
I'm not bashing the VPS schools. Shout out to them for everything that they're trying to do. But we have to be honest about what's happening within the community, in the schools that are in the community, that why Metro still exists. It's a nonprofit that was started to give kids like you a better education, but we still need it. So we have to ask the city why.
Why?
We have to ask the mayor why she didn't want to address it. She didn't address it this year when she did her address. She will wait till next year. Because it's a tough issue to talk about, right? And so issues, because people already know, they're reading the papers, it's not just me.
Right.
People are reading the Great Divide, right? And they're talking about education. So I want to be able to touch on the issues that matter to the people, whether they're suburbanites or whether they come from these communities.
So you know what you could do? You could start like a fair at some point. Where you bring in all the vendors, different restaurants that come over there.
We will. I've heard that idea too. Yeah. So like, take that from me. I'm telling you to do it. We
food.
should do it.
They have like
We need you guys to help us.
Like,
One thing I want to just add to, we've already, the work we're doing, you know what the work we're doing? So we're studying, because these are more Metco. So like a lot of the data they give me, by the time they come up with the answer, we would have already had solutions. Because we've been actually like doing the work already. So this, we don't need, and that's where he goes back to what he said about, it does, I'm not doing this to show everybody, look at what we're doing. Right? We did last year, just a full disclosure, we took everybody's, where they go to school address and where they live. And the Northeastern students analyzed that to see data points. Some of them, they didn't have no data points. The Northeastern students come to me and they go, we don't know what to do. I said, well, what's going on? Well, when we put this into the Google Maps, there's actually no way to get there. Like literally, you put their data where they live. There's no like transportation system to get there. It tells you to take a lift.
Right.
Imagine what that means for if you have to go there every day for your education.
Right. You can't go to school in your own community because your parents don't feel like the resources are there.
Right. And it's not there.
Right. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean bad teachers, right?
It's not bad teachers, no.
Like, sometimes it's bad teachers, but I'm not saying all the time, right?
There are bad teachers over there.
There's a lot of really great teachers, but if those teachers don't have the resources,
right,
then what are they to do?
They just don't have enough.
Right. And so now I gotta move my kid. My kid's 10 years old. She's going to Boston Public Schools in West Roxbury. They don't have the resources. The teachers are okay, but they don't have the resources. So now I have to put her in medical program. Right. So now next year she's gonna go to Dover Sherborne because I can't wait another 10 years in Boston Public Schools to get better. My kid's already growing up. She's gonna be in college in 7, 8 years.
Right.
I don't have time. But I care about the Boston Public Schools. I was a Boston Public School student, but as you heard at the beginning of the video, I went to private school. Right? And so I got to private school in the 9th grade and was flailing because I didn't have the resources and I wasn't being taught those skills, the foundational skills to actually survive in private school.
Right.
Right. And so it's clear, right, that the resources need to be better. We have to do a better job as a city. But again, we're not
knocking the city.
I'm not knocking the city.
In fact, we're here in the
public
public school. My level coursework, my programming, go and look at all the other programming. Our programming is on a little bit higher level because we're trying to bring that, what is that, HBC, the PWIs. I basically try to bring all the extra stuff, the kind of resources, like I got a new drone, gonna play with that too. Like I try to bring all that high level resources to the public school system. And there's a reason for it. Like I am very passionate about the work I do, but I'm an engineer. I'm here to solve problems. I'm here to talk and to show off. Who cares? In the end of the day, I got data. Whenever the mayor is ready to listen, I'll show her my data. But by then, I would have already done the work. So you're not coming to tell me what to do. I'm coming here to tell you what to do. Because you don't have any data. You're still figuring it out. Right? And we actually did there's many great things that I've heard. Brianna has been very helpful me. She goes to Dana Hall, 30 minutes away from her home. She wants a meal from her culture. She can't get it. Only 30 minutes away. She has to live in that community, right? These are things she has to go home and come back home. Even she lives 30 minutes away. There should be nothing stopping her from coming home and seeing her parents. Right? And it hurts me, I can't lie. But that's what makes it more satisfying for me to do the work, the right way. Working with people on the ground that are not in it for, there's a lot of gatekeepers out there. All right, gatekeepers are people that look like us, but they've gotten the trust of the status quo. And they don't have us to say, oh, look at these poor people we helping, they don't have a job. You understand where I'm coming from?
Keeping the doors locked.
They're keeping the doors locked so they can have a job. Oh, they don't need this and they don't need that, they don't need, yes, they do. And if you're not fighting for it, we are. All right, so I want to thank you guys. We're going to take a group photo.
Yes, that'd be great.
All right, and please give it up for me. Okay, wait. I can put it on. Of course.
And I need
Yes. So y'all were looking for work this summer, in the school year? Y'all can work for me?
Yes,
And support him.
And if you guys can help me develop a new social media campaign, that'd be great.
Looks like
All right, so let's all get together. I'll bring it. Everyone, get in, get in. I don't know if anybody's coming to the first there. We need everybody, come on, act like y'all love each other. Oh, all right, I'm gonna go. This, Haley, you literally so I can come and be, next to you when I'm ready, I got 5 seconds. They go all on one side. Yeah, everybody be there. No, I was trying to get on, but y'all, like, all right, come on.
All people can come.
They're not really, I mean, nobody, was anybody? All right. All right, I'm about to run right here, like right behind, here. 1 second. I'm here, I'm done for you. Last one. This one. I didn't see the circle go up. I'll walk back out. This is not that difficult. The rest of them, 10 seconds, I'm old, but it shouldn't be good. There you go. Hey,
If you guys can think of anything to help the business, let me know. I know. Okay. Yeah, sure.
You guys have to go for lunch, just come back in an hour.
Send that to me.
I will.
All right, guys.
All right, no, I go for lunch. And we got here.
12:15, guys.
All right.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then we're all sitting around.
Yeah.